And it's time for another episode of Agent Paranormal. It's June 14th, everyone. Welcome to phase 3 of the COVID, upstate New York COVID response. I hope everyone's getting out and around about again and getting your hair cut, going to get something to eat at a restaurant, except remaining socially distant and, of course, wearing a mask, as we all should. I'm your host, Rich, and with me is your co-host, Peter Leonard. Say hi, Peter Leonard.
Hello, Peter Leonard. Happy Flag Day to everyone out there.
Oh, it is Flag Day, yes. Of course, Pete, being a historian, is always going to remember those holidays. Anything that is military or U.S. related, correct, Pete?
Yes, I'll also be watching the chats, so if anyone out there has questions,
if you want to chat,
feel free.
Feel free. Pete will chat back with you. So I hope everyone's doing well. It's been a few weeks. We got a great episode for you tonight. All our episodes are great, Pete, don't you think?
Absolutely. This is by far the single best radio show anywhere ever. Trust me.
In all of America, in all of the free states, it is by far the best paranormal show that's out there. Now, again, we're still doing our calls from home, and once again, we're looking forward to getting back into the Disruption Studio. It is one of the most badass studios I think I've ever done any kind of streaming show in. Our engineer, Todd, has promised us a lot of great things coming up when we get back in there. We'll probably have to disinfect Pete before we let him back in. And then once we get in there, we will have hopefully some new stuff to work with, some new toys maybe, some new software, and looking forward to doing the show. So,
you know, you bring a pizza to the show one time, you drop it on the floor, pick it up and eat it, and they never let you forget about it, you know?
I don't think it was the pizza so much. I think it was all the pork rinds that Todd had to clean up afterwards. That was a little disturbing. And the Mountain Dew that spilled down the soundboard. I think outside of that, the pizza was just kind of collateral damage.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Now, for most of the people who watch us, you know there's usually two more co-hosts, Kevin and Chris. They both had family commitments, as we do at times, and they're not with us tonight. They're with us in spirit, and I'm sure someplace they are watching the show as their wives are nudging them to put their phone away and pay attention to what's going on around them. So to that we say, watch on. Please, watch on.
Being in central New York, the entire area, all like 400,000 of us have like been partying all weekend. It's the first time we actually saw real people. Like I almost forgot what Rich looked like in real person for him.
How could you forget this mug? Come on, look.
Look like?
Yeah, come on. I mean, I'm always incognito with the hat, and sometimes I do the show with the sunglasses, but for tonight, I mean, I even have the Agent Paranormal sweatshirt on, huh? Look at that. Oh, that's some hair there. Yeah.
They cut a little too much. That's why I'm...
Yeah, you should keep the hat on. It's all good. So, you know, when we do these shows, we always bring in a guest. And the guests have always been really exciting. But the type of guests that I really enjoy the most are the ones that have lived the paranormal. And what I mean is that they buy a house and then stuff happens. How many times, Pete, have we done investigations where people would tell us, oh, I wish my house was haunted. No, you don't. Well, yeah, I really wish it was haunted. It'd be so cool. No, you don't. So we've had Carmen Reed on. We have DeAnna Simpson tonight. Both people who've owned homes that had some very upscale paranormal activity. to the point where we're beyond just the normal, like maybe a little child spirit playing around with things, to something that could be possibly demonic, something possibly negative. So when those situations come up, it's not as fun as it would seem. And in DeAnna's case, in the Hanover Haunting case, essentially there was a news crew from Fox that went in to do an interview with them, and the camera crew, the guy that was operating the camera, actually got scratched. So there was an attack on the media. Imagine that, attack on the media by the paranormal during their visit there. So when those kind of things happen, it kind of makes you wonder really what's kind of going on.
And it's also amazing, I mean, for people watching this stuff that are on the border or don't really know if the paranormal's real, you'll be surprised what people actually really live with. Like really, really live with before telling someone what is actually happening.
Right. There's a link on the Facebook page, and I'm hoping the people that are watching tonight actually watch that link. There is a really good EVP on there that says, "Come here." I mean, you can hear it as clear as day. And there's some really good photographic evidence on there of shadows. So that's the kind of stuff that people live with on a day in and day out basis. And it can be very unnerving, to say the least. So we're going to get DeAnna on here in a minute, and she's going to dive into it and answer some questions, tell us about the experience. Before we get there yet, though, let's talk about how much media coverage has been on this event. We know when we had the Haunting Connecticut before, we know there was a documentary. We know it was made into a movie, which the movie was kind of a very far stretch from the actual documentary in the case it happened, but that's what happens when Hollywood gets a hold of things, because now it becomes entertainment in addition to just a story. So this story, DeAnna Simpson's story, was seen on The Haunted, The Dead Files, My Haunted House, and even Ghost Hunters. Those are some heavy hitter shows. They don't go in there and do anything just because you hear a bump in the middle of the night. I mean, there's got to be some serious activity going on for that. And we also talked about the Fox 43 News crew that went in that was attacked. And you can also see stuff about the story on CNN and Inside Edition, as well as the Travel Channel. So there's been some really good coverage of this case. In addition to that, they went as far to write a book called The Hanover Haunting, which is the DeAnna Simpson story. The foreword was written by our good friend John Zaffis.
Oh, Lord. He's like the Kevin Bacon of our paranormal world here, right? Which is always like 7 degrees away.
Did you say the Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, he's the Kevin Bacon of the paranormal. Everybody's always 12 steps or 7 steps away from him.
I'm not really sure I'd want to see him do the Footloose, but anyways, you're right. He's involved in a lot of cases, and he's involved in a lot of books. So there's going to be some credibility to this, especially if he writes the foreword to it. So if you're interested in the book, which I highly recommend, you can go to Amazon.com, because you can get everything on Amazon.com now, and get The Hanover Haunting, the DeAnna Simpson story, and get that either Kindle or the paperback and read it. It's a very enlightening book, and if you like these paranormal stories, this is definitely one that you don't want to miss. So, without further delay, please welcome DeAnna Simpson.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome to Agent Paranormal. How are you tonight?
Hey, it's my pleasure. I'm doing great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you perfect. Now, just so people know, DeAnna and I know each other. She's a friend of mine. And a few years ago, I came across her. Our paths crossed. And the one thing I can tell you about DeAnna, she's like the sweetest woman you're ever going to talk to. So sweet sometimes. And it amazes me how she keeps that calm, cool, collect sweetness, considering everything that went on with that case.
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I can tell you, it was the most challenging thing that I've ever done in my life, and I can honestly say that I don't know about other people, but it has forever changed me. Matter of fact, the haunting was so severe, and thank God I have the Godfather as my friend, like a lot of people do. But he said, Dee, I think you have post-traumatic stress syndrome, and it's very normal for people to go into counseling. And I actually had to go into counseling after we were out of the house because the nightmares about the haunting just continued. And I did have one woman, Christiana, which I'll explain later. She did follow me to our new home. She's definitely a protector, and I was grateful that I had her in the home. But it has forever changed me, and I'm very blessed of all the people that I have met and shared their stories and the common interests that we had. So that was a blessing too.
Very good. So it sounds like there is some positive stuff that came out of this whole ordeal.
Absolutely.
It wasn't all negative. So let's talk about Hanover. Hanover's in Pennsylvania. It's what, an hour maybe outside of Gettysburg?
Oh, even closer. You're looking at 20 minutes into Gettysburg. Matter of fact, Hanover is very historical. It did have the Battle of Hanover with the North and the South before they went to Gettysburg. And we live about a mile from where they marched down Frederick Street to go to the Battle of Gettysburg.
There's some historical significance there. So
yes.
Now, Pete and I were in Gettysburg last year in October. We were out doing some lectures, and Pete said, we're down this way about an hour outside of Gettysburg. Let's go spend the day there. And I've never been there. I've never been to the battlegrounds, the park. And Pete took me in there. And we actually did like a kind of an investigation there. As soon as it got dark till, I think it was, 10:30, Pete, we had to be out of the park?
Yep, 10
Everyone
o'clock.
had to be out. 10 o'clock. Everybody had to be out. So obviously we weren't the only ones that had the idea to go ghost hunting. There were a bunch of other people there as well. But one interesting thing happened as we were there that we both experienced is we were at, I think Devil's Den?
Yes. Yep.
Devil's Den. And we were staring across the street at the hill where I believe the Union troops were entrenched. And we heard a shot go off. It was a loud shot. And it sounded weird because it didn't sound like – because Pete and I are both kind of into guns and shooting and things like that. And, I know what a shotgun sounds like. I know what a pistol, a rifle. You can hear that. But this sounded different, but it was loud, and it was definitely a gun. So – take it for what you're worth. What do you think, Pete? You think it was possibly a musket round, or do you think there were some hunters in the state park that shouldn't have been there?
That sound came from behind us, which would have been in the wheat field direction. So there shouldn't have been anybody back there with any type of guns. Plus, being around reenactors, that had a very distinct crack fire to it. The sound was more of a crack more than a bang, which is reminiscent of black powder. Just one of those weird things. I thought that was wonderful. It's actually the first time I've experienced something in Gettysburg. Normally, for me, very peaceful and quiet. I don't ever encounter anything out there.
It was an interesting area to me because of this, all the history and stuff. And I go on the battlefield, I see it, and then I hear a gunshot at night. So that was, that was pretty cool. So there's a lot of stuff that goes around the Gettysburg area, like Hanover, like we talk about. So,
yes.
So take us back here. So you find this house that you like,
Yes.
I bought a few houses myself, so I'm familiar with the experience. So you find a house you like, you make an offer, you buy it. When you went and looked at the house before you purchased, did you get any sense that there was something going on or something wrong?
Yeah, now that I look back, now you got to remember that, growing up in Kentucky, that I was a Southern Baptist girl with very strict parents. We never talked about ghosts. We never watched any kind of television show about ghosts. Brother had to sneak me in the back door to go see The Exorcist. Never. I know. Oh, that's a whole nother show. Oh my gosh. And so, I really wasn't knowledgeable about this, but I can honestly tell you that when my husband and I We're actively looking for homes. And when we went to this house, as soon as we pulled up, I was elated. I mean, it reminded me of a childhood home that I grew up in when I was a little girl in Kentucky with my mom and my dad and my brother. So as soon as I saw the house, I was very excited about it. And then once we got into the home, it had, every home has got that. Every home's got a familiar smell. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So as soon as we walked into this home, I said, oh, my God, Tom, this house even smells like the home that my mom and dad's living in. And I went, oh, my God, look at this tile in the kitchen. This is the same tile that my parents have in their home now. Oh, my gosh, I remember this when I was little. It's got the green tile in the bathroom. Like, I was enamored. I was completely, like, I wanted that house as soon as I got in it. I just had to have it. So I was really, really drawn to the house, or should I say it was drawing me into the home.
That's interesting because, I mean, it sounds to me like, most people go in there like, oh, I love it. It's great. Let's go back. Let's talk about it. But this was almost like an immediate attraction. You're like, I got to have this place. Everything in here smells and speaks to me, Yes. So, could that be something that's paranormal? I don't know. Anything is really possible. So you get drawn to this house, you buy it, you move in. When did things start to happen?
Well, actually, it started to happen immediately. Once we bought the house and we got the keys in our hands, we went inside the home. I started taking all of these pictures. I wanted to send them back home to my mom and dad because it was our first home that Tom and I purchased together, starting our new life. And I was seeing all of these big white, not little, dust mites or dust balls or whatever, reflection of light. Huge orbs. I was getting this mist that was coming up, and in one room I actually got a black shadow. And I said to my husband, I said, ooh, what do you make of this? Do you think this was my camera, or what do you think this could be? Because I had no sense of feeling about this. And he just said, honey, it's a reflection of light. It all is. There, you got hardwood floors. You got, windows with no curtains. But once we moved into the home, that feeling of euphoria, like I had to have it. I was so happy. It all of a sudden, the air kind of became thick. I was almost just a tad bit at unease, and I had a 14-year-old cat that she was very, very afraid of the home. And I thought, well, that's normal. It's a new environment, and started off subtle, very subtle like that, to the point where it just increased. When I would be, my husband's a pharmacist, so he works a lot of late hours, doesn't get home until after 9. And I noticed that I felt like I wasn't alone in the home. I had to have all the lights on. I was constantly looking over my shoulders. When I would explain this to my husband, he was just like, well, Dee, hey, you're in a new environment. You got to get used to it. You got to claim it. You got to make it your own. And I was like, yeah, that's right. To the point where my cat was regressing, like going in the closet, wouldn't come out, started hissing, if I pulled her out, to go feed her, she would automatically just run back in the closet. Then it got to the point where we started smelling cigar smoke. And once again, my husband just said, well, maybe somebody used to smoke cigars who used to live here. Common, slow stuff like that started to happen, but happened immediately.
So it's almost like there was a 180. You went in with this feeling of like joy and happiness and going to build our life, to all of a sudden totally uneasy, feel like being watched.
Yes.
Cat is very apprehensive. I can tell you it's very disturbing. And I know Pete can speak on this topic as well. We've done a lot of investigations, and I've been in some places that I know there's activity going on. I can feel the energy levels. And I've been in places where I feel nothing. But then I've been in places where I walk in and I'm like, I don't like it here at all. I feel like I should basically put my back against a wall because something's behind me all the time. Something's watching me. I'm not alone. And that is a very uncomfortable, disturbing feeling. You know, it's kind of You go on the couch and you pull a blanket up and you're watching TV, but you got one eye looking at the entrance of the room you're in, another one looking over and around the corner, and it's a very uneasy thing. That's very difficult to relax. And a home is where you're supposed to be the most comfortable, right? The most relaxed. It's your home. I mean, that's where you yeah, exactly. All the troubles of the world stop when you open that door, walk in, and close it. Basically, you're in your basically your home free zone, your safe zone. And when that becomes the area that becomes the most disturbing, it really does mess with your psyche. It's a horrible thing to deal with. It truly is.
You're right. It truly is. And the haunting got so severe, just like you said, and I don't mean to jump the story, but
oh no, not at all. Go ahead.
But you embarked on something that, like I said, my husband's a pharmacist, and it got to the point where when I worked at the hospital as a phlebotomist at the time, I would get off at work at 3:30 in the afternoon, and there was days that I would pull into the driveway, look at the house, and I would get such an oppressed feeling that I didn't even want to go in. Like, I would just drive to the mall, drive over to my daughter's apartment. I would do anything to avoid going in that house until I knew that my husband would be home.
Now, when did I don't know if this even happened at all, but did your husband start to develop these reactions, these feelings along the way at some point? Because it sounds to me, and this is very common in a lot of cases that we deal with, where one person is the one that's being the focus of the activity or sometimes the attack, and the other person's just like, well, it's a new place, or they come up with logical reasons that they were taught along the way of what's probably happened to dismiss anything.
Yes.
And that sounds to me like that's how your husband wants to start with.
Yes.
When did he come about at any point in time and said, oh my God, there really is something going on here?
Yes. And it took him a long time. We must have been 5 years into the haunting, because the house was, the house was really pulling us apart. And I'm sure people can appreciate this. I mean, Tom was 50, I was 45. We'd both been through divorces. We had to borrow the money from our parents we had to borrow $30,000 to put down on this house. So what was happening is everything during the haunting within that 5 years, I would always run to Tom and cry and say this and that, and it was telling him my experiences, and it was pulling us apart instead of pulling us together. And the point that Tom totally believed it was when we were sitting in the family room, and all of a sudden the cats started doing their growling, and they were hissing, and we both looked over like, what's going on here, right? We were just sitting in the family room watching a movie, and then all of a sudden the basement door is where they were hissing, and Tom and I started to see black smoke. Well, instinctively, Tom thought something was on fire.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, and I would too. He's the practical one, but I'm like, I don't smell nothing. I see it, but I don't smell it. So I knew it couldn't be fire, but Tom's thinking that. So we both walk, and Tom went to go open up the basement door, and I was like, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Oh my God, if there's a fire, don't touch it. And we start watching this big black mist coming out from underneath the basement door. We walk into the kitchen, and we start seeing the formation of this mass just come up. And it started like, how do you say it? Like it was like a sea urchin. It was started flapping its wings. This thing just like, it started flapping its wings. And as it was levitating and flapping its wings, it started to form like a tornado. And as it was forming its tornado, we could actually feel the wind. Our hair was moving with each intensity of this flap of this sea urchin. And as it was flapping, it tunneled right into the ceiling. And as it tunneled up into the ceiling, we could start to hear screams. Like it was just screaming, like cries, like all different kinds of women, men, children. We can hear cries, and it got sucked up, and it left fingerprints, and
you're giving me chills. It's going up and down my spine listening to the story.
I tell you, and it left a big black mark on the ceiling and left these fingerprints. And all of a sudden, we were just standing there, and I was like, "What about that, Tom? What about that? Do you believe me now? Do you believe me now? What was that, Tom?" But Tom, being the pharmacist, he just stood in disbelief because it was almost against his rationality. He just couldn't conceive this. Like it was beyond his comprehension.
Yeah.
And
sure.
because I was the one telling him of all the stories. But then what had happened is one night my daughter was in the house. Now, we went to Kentucky, right? We went to Kentucky to go visit my mom and dad at the time. And my daughter calls up at 3 a.m, and she's screaming, and she's like, Mom, I heard a loud gunshot. And Mom, I heard this loud gunshot. And then I heard this thump. I heard this loud thump coming from Tom's office. And I was like, Amber, just call the cops. Just call the cops. And she's like, well, Mom, I'm going to walk through the house. I'm going to go to Tom's office. I'm going to get a knife. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to call the cops, and you're getting out of the house. Well, with that, Amber opened up Tom's den, and he had this huge 8-point elk that was mounted on the wall, that had a post, and that you had to click the mount twice to get it into this post. And as soon as she opened the door, this mount from the wall came over about 2 feet and was just laid there in the middle of the floor, staring at Amber when she opened the door. And even then, Tom did not believe me. He right away, he thought, oh, she's 21. She had a party, the boys probably were in my room, and, they were probably having beer and pizza, and I bet they took that elk head off the wall. I bet. And I'm like, yeah, right, Tom. There's some, there you go. There's some young kids in there looking at your elk head, and they're going to take it off the wall. I said, come on,
DeAnna, he's a man of logic, reasoning, science.
Too much,
a pharmacist, right? A pharmacist, he prescribes. Or doesn't prescribe, but he prepares medication for people that's scientifically, devised to cure illnesses. There's counting and there's math involved. There's science, and when you start coming up with something that doesn't fit that train of thought. You can't. The paranormal is something you can't explain. If you experience it and explain it to people that have an open mind to it, or just want to believe it, then it's a different thing. But if you have a closed mind to the paranormal, it's been my personal experience that you won't experience things. If you basically believe this does not exist, and you walk in and the furniture's floating and everything else, and you believe this does not exist, you're not going to experience anything, and you're going to find a way to dismiss it. So, go ahead, Pete.
Oh, sorry. We have that delay, so I'm sorry. It's almost like a coping mechanism, because if you remember the one team member we had where we did that one investigation and something touched him, and you knew something touched him because there was nothing near him that could touch him that wasn't paranormal. And then the next day, his explanation was why he was leaving the world of the paranormal is that ninjas descended from the ceiling, touched him on his back, and then quietly descended back. But that's what he had to tell himself.
Oh.
What happened? That was his coping mechanism of handling. Until this day, he'll still say it was ninjas.
Wow.
It affects people in different ways. So,
Yes.
You had this experience. Your husband had this experience. We'll call it the demonic tornado. We'll just call it that, okay?
Yes.
I'm not saying that's what it is, but my experience right now, the way you're explaining things to me, that seems to be something very dark and negative.
Yes.
That could be possibly demonic when you start talking about that kind of stuff happening.
Yes.
So after that, so he still sort of shut it out as kind of dismissing it for something that, I mean, I don't know, maybe the HVAC went on the wire, or maybe I don't,
yeah, exactly. I mean, he had his, like you said, Tom's too smart for his own good. You know, he had his scientific brain saying blah, 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 blah. And I was like, tone it down. I don't understand you. What are you saying? And then he's like, Dee, what do you think it is? What do you, and then and I was like, honey, that was a ghost. There's no other way to explain it. And now, as we're sitting there at the table, and we're talking about, okay, like we're arguing. We're starting to argue. And when I'm like, Amber did not have a party, that Elkhead was not taken down by a bunch of, drunken teenagers having a pizza party. And I said, and what about that black mass? And what about when we heard the screaming? And what about? And then he was like, you know what, Dee? I don't know. But this is the part that I leave. And he says, I just can't take this anymore. Now we're arguing. And then he gets up and then he clutches his arm and he's like, ow, oh my God. And I'm like, I jump up in fear and I'm like, what's the matter? What's the matter? Because, Nick Petrulli, he did the same thing with Fox 43. He grabs his arm. And Tom rolled up his shirt sleeve. And as he rolled it up, now, you guys need to explain this to me because I'm constantly wanting to understand things.
We'll try.
yeah, come on now. I know you can do it. I know you can for me. Between you and Pete, he rolled up his arm sleeve. As he was grabbing his arm was a cross etched into his arm. And it cut the skin. He had blood droplets on his skin. It was marked in him so hard. And then I looked at him and I started crying and I said, explain that, explain that, what happened? There was no cat, there was no this, there was no that. You tell me how. And then that's when he hugged me and he just said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dee. I don't understand it, but there's something here. I don't understand it, but there is. He says, I'm sorry. And that's when he had his waking moment at that time. But why would it be an X?
So it wasn't an X, but it was an actual cross.
No, it was to me, it looked like an X. You're the first one to say, could have it been a cross? Maybe the way I was looking at him across the table.
Okay.
Maybe it could have been a cross, but it was definitely, an X or a cross, and I don't understand that. I don't.
Well, a couple different things come to mind. Pete, why don't you start off? Why don't you chime in here first?
Sure, put me on the spot. No.
Yeah, come on, Pete.
I would say anything religious related would trigger, to me, something negative. Not per se demonic. I know that term's thrown
Right.
quite a bit.
Yes. Yes.
If it wasn't a perfect Christian cross, an X could actually represent St. Peter's cross because he was,
Oh.
or is it St. Andrew? One of them was crucified on an X. I'm at a loss right here for right now. Might actually been.
Well.
So there's another reference to religion possibly.
Okay.
We see the three lines scratched, the parallel lines.
Yes.
We
Yes.
equate thing just trying to get your attention. I mean, every other group in the world equates that to demonic activity. It's basically something's trying to hold your arm, grab your arm, and really when you do it as a real person, you see what three fingers actually leave pressure on your skin. So that's that. Anything that would be negative, I would always think along those lines with the cross or an X. X maybe meaning, we're marking you. That might be.
Yes.
Like you're the target.
Yes.
And where was it on? Was it on his arm or?
It was on his arm. Like as if you look at your wrist and look up, it was between his elbow and his wrist. And I mean, it was a good size X. It was about 3 inches or across, whatever. A good 3 inches. I mean, it took up a lot of circumference of his arm. It was very big.
Or the metaphysics view to that is maybe something intervened to make him believe that, so he could help you out. If
Could
you know
be.
by that, someone intervened to say she's experiencing this. It's time for you to wake up to it.
Yeah, I like the last one that Pete pitched. That's kind of what I was thinking. In talking to you about this, how you said that one of the spirits left the home and came with you.
Yes, Christiana.
So let's for example believe that is a good spirit. Okay.
Okay.
And then the black tornado sounds to me like that was definitely something on the negative side. Mm-hmm. So possibly, since he was being defiant of you and you guys are fighting over it, and it could possibly lead to worse. I mean, fights can build up to more and more. Maybe the spirit, the positive part of this, basically reached out to communicate with him by scratching him, marking him to say, hey, this is real. Now, after he saw that, he became a believer, or started at least to support you in your belief. Yes. So maybe that was something that happened that had a good intention behind it to move things forward, to be quite honest, as compared to something that was negative. The only problem is that we kind of know how to communicate to spirits this day and age, but I'm not really sure spirits know how to communicate to us. So whatever way they can do it to get someone's attention, they're going to do it. So, all right. So here we are at this point now where he's on board with you, at least starting to believe, letting his guard down that something's going on. Okay.
Yes.
When did you get to the point where you thought you needed to get some assistance? You had to reach out to the paranormal community to bring somebody in.
Yeah, I very reluctantly started getting feelers at work like, hey guys, does anybody believe in, like I was testing the waters because I didn't know how to approach people at work about I couldn't, people would be like, DeAnna, oh my God, look at you. Like, aren't you getting any sleep? And I'm like, no, I just keep having nightmares or, and then I started approaching people at work. And I had this one girl who did believe in the paranormal. She said, listen, I'm going to give you a phone number. It's a paranormal team. I said, a paranormal team? She's like, yeah, they're going to come in. They're going to investigate your house, and they're going to help you. And I'm like, okay, all right, cool. And she's like, here, you need them to come out to your house? And I said, yes, I need answers. So what had happened is I came home and I sat my husband down very reluctantly, and I said, how would you feel about if I brought in a team? He goes, a team? What are you talking about here? what's going on? And I said, I'd like to bring in some people to see if I believe our house is haunted. And how do you feel about that? And he's like, well, you know what, Dee? You go ahead. You go ahead and you bring out this team. But I tell you what, when are they coming? And I said, well, they can come Friday. And he's like, well, I'm going to go out with my brother, and I'm going to go, I'm going to go to the Moose, and I'm going to knock down a few brewers, and I'm going to get me some chicken wings. And I said, no, you got to stay. And he's like, no, you have fun, honey. Go ahead and do that. And I brought in this team, which was a very nice team, and I really liked everybody. And they brought in a medium, and she was blowing my mind with the things she was saying, like, you got a portal here and you have this here. They caught a lot of EVPs. They caught a lot of pictures. And, they said they would be back to disclose the information that they got.
Right.
So when they did come back, and Tom was there for that, they were, throwing all, it scared me. It scared me to death. And then they were just like, but don't worry about it, because we're going to cleanse your home and everything's going to be fine. You don't, it's just going to be fine. And Tom's like, what do you mean you're going to cleanse the home? You're going to bless the house? And they're like, yeah, we're going to all go together and we're going to say the Lord's Prayer and we're going to bless the house. We're going to bring some holy water in. We're going to bring some sage, and we're going to bring in some other incense, and we're going to bring in some crystals and a Reiki healer and a medium. And Tom's like, oh my God, DeAnna, are you serious?
It's like that's like a metaphysical team right there, boy. That's like it's like the first responders of the paranormal there are coming in.
Yeah.
Cow.
Holy cow. And they came in. I said, Tom, it really means a lot to me. And he says, okay, if it means this much to you, I'll be here for you. And we did that. And you know what? For the first 2 weeks, it felt pretty good.
Cool.
It felt pretty good. And then it got pissed.
Don't like the way this is going.
It got pissed. And it came back 10-fold. I started, like when I moved in there, I started having this dream of these two men. And the one had a comb over. He had black military glasses. He looked like he was from the 60s. I could even see his shirt was that cotton with the pinstripes, and he had those polyester pants, with the black belt. And I had another in with the dream describing that man. Then there was a bald man next to him, and he was short in stature, but he was very fit. He had suspenders on. He had a white T-shirt, but he was dirty, like he was a mechanic. He gave me that impression, like you could see the dirt on him, like, he was a mechanic. And I kept having these dreams and I would wake up and I would tell Tom, oh my God, I'm having dreams of two men. And he was like, I know what, tomorrow night, if you have the same dream, why don't you ask them what they want? And I said, okay. That's a good idea. I'll ask them what they want. So about a week went by. I had another dream of the men. And as I was laying there, my back was against Tom. And all of a sudden, I felt my hair being stroked. And I said, Tom, what are you doing? My eyes were closed. And I was like, Tom. And he's stroking my hair. And when I opened up my eyes, the men were no longer a dream. The men were standing there at the edge of my bed, and I could see them in a ghost silhouette. Does that make sense? Like a ghost silhouette. And as I looked at these men, it was like their face started to melt, and they were gray, and their eyes were like whitish with a tinge of gray, and through their mouth, I could hear them say, their mouth was shouting, "Get out!" I mean, they were screaming at me. And the moment I started screaming back, Tom was like, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And I mean, I was just all shooken up, and Tom didn't see it, but that's when I started to see these entities. They were showing themselves to me, not just in dreams.
Were either of them wearing a hat by any chance?
No, but but guess what? You're going to need to tell me why, because I do have a story for you about a hat man. Yes, I do.
I'm unfamiliar with the actual story, but I've seen it like within the past 2 weeks trending on the Facebooks. People have been reporting seeing a lot of like the black shadow figure.
Mm-hmm.
The old type of brimmed hat, 1920.
Yes.
So
huge.
I have researched that, but
well, I tell you, talking about the Hat Man, I have another story that, and this is where Christiana comes in. It got to the point where I didn't want to sleep upstairs anymore because I kept having reoccurring dreams about the two men, screaming at me, trying, always touching me, telling me to get out. Now, Pete, I started sleeping on the first floor, and my husband's like, "Why aren't you sleeping with me?" And I'm like, "I can't have this dream anymore. I can't see these men anymore. I can't handle it." Now, this is driving Tom and I apart. Now we're not even sleeping together. So one night, I was downstairs, and did you see the Dead Files? Did you see our episode, The Assaulted? Did you see that?
I have not. I don't have cable, so I'm one of those cheap people.
I
don't blame you. I don't blame you, but you can see it on YouTube. That's okay.
Is it on?
Allen, yeah, it's on YouTube. Look at Rich, like, ha. No. What had happened is I was downstairs, and I was sleeping in the guest bedroom. And one night I was laying in my bed. I was laying on this side. I was sleeping on my side. And all of a sudden, it was like I was dreaming. Once again, I was dreaming. And in this dream, I was like levitated out of my body, and I was floating on the ceiling, looking down on my body. Now remember, I'm like, wow, I'm in deep sleep. I'm having a dream. Why am I looking at my body? And all of a sudden, I started seeing this black smoke coming out from underneath the bedroom door. And as this black smoke came towards the bed, it started to have a formation. And right at that time, I was thrown right back into my body. And I woke up to this slithering mass it was half man from the waist up. And it had just like a skeleton skin type face, like as if it was a dead body that had rigor mortis. That's the best way I could describe it. But the waist down, it was a serpent. And it had a huge black hat on. And because I remember on my sleep, I felt it crawling up on my bed. And I could feel the imprint of this thing crawling in, like as if it was human, had so much weight to it. And he put his hand on my body, and it felt hot. It was very uncomfortable, like it was nerve pain, like it hurt. And then he just got right in my face. And as he was talking, he smelt of the most putrid thing that I can't even describe it. It just smelled like rotting flesh, just sewage, fecal. It just smelled of, I can't describe it. It was so bad. And he started running his hands on me, and he said, I can taste you. I can smell you. And he was pinning me down. And he said, you are mine. And with that, I just started screaming and crying. And that's when I started hearing this tapping against the outside window. And when I heard this tapping of like a long fingernail, it stopped. It stopped. And I was no longer pinned. And when I turned around, it wasn't even there anymore. But that was just the start of many times that this thing was coming out.
So did anybody ever tell you what that might be?
No.
Has anybody ever mentioned astral traveling to you?
No.
If you don't mind, I'll give a similar happened to me.
Please.
Unfortunately, as a kid, I grew up in a haunted house, so I always have sympathy for people who experience this stuff. You have to live it in order to really understand it. So, like we had the scientific people, we had Rich, who was super skeptic. But it's like when you grow up with it, it's like you don't have an option anymore. It's not a skeptic thing. It's you live with it.
Yes.
But I worked with a lady who was in a astral travel society, and she explained it to me, how to do it, this and that. And you're always interested when you're in the paranormal. You're like, that would be fun. Part of you thinks, well, this is all bull crap. And then the other half, I want to try it. If this is really real, I want to try it. So I did that one night. I did exactly how she laid the steps out, how to try it. I did it. And believe it or not, like as you went into that sleep, I started seeing what looked like red plasma. Like I was moving through some kind of plasma. And then I ended up in the location I started thinking about. Me being the big ball buster, excuse my language, I kept telling I want to go to the Akashic Hall of Records. Like I went right for the top, right off the bat. And I kid you not, all of a sudden I materialized in this futuristic looking room. There was a metallic desk that was 12 feet tall. Everything was backlit. And then out of nowhere, this voice just filled my body. It's like, what are you doing here? And I'm looking where the voice is coming from. And it's like, you don't belong here. You don't have a passport. And the next thing I knew, I was slammed back into my body, sort of like you described. And I was conscious, and standing at the foot of my bed was a very mean looking man with a knife in his hand. That woke me up the second time. That was the one that woke me up, jumped out of bed, oh my God, there's a guy in the house with a knife. So when I went to work the next day, I explained this to the lady, and she's like, oh yeah, she's like, there was an absolute astral travel. She's like, I don't know why you were stupid enough to try going there. She's like, you didn't visit a physician, you didn't get a passport. She's laying out all these things why I should.
Oh my gosh.
And she explained that was one of the protectors of that realm. You couldn't go back in there. And she also brought up the point, she's like, be very careful because there's a lot of dark creatures that float around in the astral world looking for someone like us. A lot of people, I'm one of them. I have, people call them dreams. I have visitations with people that have been dead for years, my parents, family members, friends. That's what they call involuntary astral traveling.
Oh.
However your brain is rigged, when you go to sleep, we're able to cross into that dimension where we can see and communicate with them. And I'm not talking about, oh, there's Dad like at 10 feet. Like you were having regular conversations like we're talking now.
Right.
I mean, I guess maybe that could be mental illness. I don't know. I hope not. But
I don't think so. I don't think so.
That's what they look at. You know, it's like, you talk to your dad. He's been dead for 17 years. To me, that might be another realm to look into. You might be an involuntary astral traveler.
Well, you know, I'm going to look into that because it was horrific. You know, it was absolutely horrific, and I had a couple other experiences after that, and if that's the case, I'd like to shut it down. But
can I bug you with one other question? Do you have dreams where you actually wake up and get slammed into your body?
You know, I did on that occurrence, and I did on one other occurrence. But all right, so let me share this with you, if I could, Peter. That
sure.
Another time when I was laying in bed. Now, I had just lost my father at this time, and I was grieving massively because I am so fortunate to have a beautiful relationship with both of my parents that are since passed. I remember before I went to bed, I said, Dad, I could really talk to you, and I need you, and I need you so bad. So, you know, I cry myself to sleep because I'm bothered by my loss of my father. And then once again, all of a sudden, I was dreaming. And in my dream, I heard my dad go, Dee Dee. And I went, oh my God, Daddy. And in my dream, I sat up in bed and I said, Daddy, where are you? And I looked over in the corner and he was sitting in my rocking chair. And it was my dad. And I was like, oh my God, Daddy, oh, I love you so much. And all my, and like I said, I'm dreaming. And I'm like, I love you so much. Oh, Daddy, I miss you. Oh, and he says, well, it's time to go. And I was like, no, you just got here. And then all of a sudden I hear, it's time to go. And then once again, there was the same image, black hat, half body, smelt of Gettysburg after the battle of all the rotting flesh, and serpent bottom. And then it was just, and I was like, oh my God, oh my. Is that astral? Is that what you're talking about when you say astral? Because then it left. It was gone. After I started screaming, it was gone.
That does fit the description of astral traveling, and it also fits the description of what they call visitation dreams. I don't know if that's another term you've ever heard of, but that's where like loved ones come and visit you in a dream. I put dreams in rabbit ears because, like I say, a lot of them you're actually communicating with them. For me, when I have them, the reason I asked you, I've been doing research for this for several years.
Okay.
Anytime I have a visitation dream, I'm always slammed back into my body. But just before I wake up, it involves a mode of transportation. Like, I'll be with the person who's visiting me, and we're going to step on an elevator. We go to step on together, they'll step back, I step on the elevator, and as soon as I step on the elevator, I'm up. Same thing with like getting into a car. So a few times with trains, airplanes, it's like some type of motion triggers you to come back.
Okay.
That's why I'm always interested, and I bug people who have these dreams to see if anything similar ever pops up. And it's really weird. Like I had one that time, there's my dad. He's like, go ahead, get on the elevator. So literally as soon as I step on the elevator, I'm slammed back into my body. I'm trying to gasp for air because it's but then I remember every single part of that. Most of the time you don't ever remember your dreams, but every one of those visitations, I remember everything about them. Even remember everything about them.
Exactly. And that's exactly, you're right, because in dreams, sometimes you can wake up and you go, oh, and your brain can only remember a couple things in it. But like you just said, I can remember every detail, everything I saw, everything I heard, every fearful experience. But mine are fearful. Were not happy over there. They were extremely, extremely fearful.
You know, it seems to me, you know, besides the whole astral travel thing here, that there's something a little bit more sinister going on here. When you talk about the being that visits you, the serpent, the smell and everything, when you're, you know, the things that it said to you, the fact that you're in bed sleeping, it almost sounds a little bit like an incubus, a little bit, the start of one, you know?
Yes.
Yes. You know what an incubus is, correct? So,
I found that out.
Yeah, it's a male demon that is believed to have sexual intercourse with sleeping women.
Right.
And so that sounds to me like, you know, that experience could be considered an incubus. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts going on here, you know, with this investigation. So did you, I mean, you had a paranormal group come in. They did the whole thing. Obviously, we found out what happened there. Did you escalate it up and reach out to somebody like a John Zaffis, someone who's a little bit more into the demonologist side of things, the darker side of the paranormal?
Well, actually, I was introduced, I was told to get Bill Bean out there. And Bill Bean is, do you know Bill Bean?
Billy Bean, yes. I know who he
Billy
is.
Bean. And he is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. I can't say enough about him. Melissa Lippert said you need Bill Bean in and you need an exorcism. Because I mean, I just have story upon story upon story about everything that has happened in that house. And it's like a 3-layer of haunting, you guys. The basement and the portal, that's, and the stories we were told what happened in the basement, then the first floor, then the 3rd floor. Melissa said you got to have Bill out where he's going to do, you know, an exorcism. So his friend Bob came with him to film and take photography. And Bill did a 6-hour, I mean, that man worked so hard. He did a 6-hour exorcism in every inch of that house. And at the very end of the exorcism, I looked at Melissa and I said, oh my God, my back is burning. My back is burning. And she said, come here, let me see. So her and I walked into the bathroom and she raised my shirt and I had a letter M scratched into my back, and next to the M were 3 scratches. So she took a picture of it. And we went right out of the bathroom and she was like, Bill, right now, get in here and say a prayer over DeAnna. So we went into the kitchen and he saw what was on my back and he was just thoroughly disgusted with what he saw. He started praying and he was praying intensely, you know, just intentionally, just with all of his heart. And at that time, while he was praying, coming through the house, not in any particular room of the house. I mean, it came in through the house like it was on speaker. Do you guys remember Boris Karloff? Remember Boris Karloff? He did the Thriller with Michael Jackson. Remember his deep voice? Well,
Oh, yeah.
You heard this Boris Karloff like growl. And then when the growl stopped, you started to hear this witch's cackling and laughter. She just started laughing. And then when that stopped, we all just stood there like in disbelief of what we were hearing. Then a baby, like a newborn baby, just started screaming at the top of its lungs. And at that point, we were all the F out of there. We all just went out the front door. We were done. And I know Bill thought that was the release of the emotions of the negative spirit, those three things. And he really thought they were releasing themselves back to hell. And once again, the house felt lighter. But a couple weeks went by, it got really intense. And just like I was telling Peter, one night I was in a dream state. And all of a sudden I was dreaming that I was in a cemetery, and it was snowing and it was beautiful, and I'm in the middle of this cemetery. I'm not afraid. I'm at peace. And I see this big black crow. I mean, he's just cawing and cawing, and he's beautiful, and he lands on this headstone. And I'm like, why am I here? It's so beautiful. Why am I here? And then all of a sudden I look straight ahead, and here comes a alignment of monks. They were all levitated. They were levitating in the air. They had no arms. They had no face. They had no legs. Just the cape. And as this cape was coming towards me, all of a sudden, like I was telling Peter, they came before me, and I just was frightened to the very depths of my soul. I just remember trembling so bad that my teeth were chattering. And then out of the ground shot up this ginormous, like 8-foot hooded, you could tell he was the leader. He ruled. And he was so powerful. I was so afraid I couldn't even look at him. And in my dream, I remember falling to my knees, and I couldn't even look up at him. And he laughed at me, and he said, your Yahweh, or your God, has given me permission to roam the earth with 10 others. So you can pray all you want, because your God, your Yahweh, cannot help you now. And then he started laughing. And with that, I woke up screaming and sobbing. And he was at the foot of my bed. And I just screamed at the top of my lungs. And I just remember pulling the covers over my head and just saying the serenity prayer. And Tom came down, and it looked like I was crazy because there was nobody there.
So when did you decide enough is enough, we're getting out of here? And how did you get out of there?
What had happened is when I lost my dad, we were just like, my mom was still alive, and I said, Tom, we're looking for homes, we're looking for homes, we're looking for homes. And what had happened when I lost my mom a few years later, because we were top heavy. I don't know if you remember, but we bought our house in 2008, and then the market took a crash. And when it took a dive, we paid $218. We couldn't get but, like $170 for the house, because we'd been to the bank several times. Plus we were paying back the $30,000. And once my mom passed, I got some inheritance. And I just said, Tom, I love you. You can stay here, but I'm moving. And I want you to come with me. But I am moving. I am not staying. And even Zaphis told me to get out. So after I got my inheritance, we started looking, and we found our rancher, and we bought our rancher about a year ago.
So what's going on with the house?
Oh,
The old house.
Oh my gosh, it sat on the market again for 8 months. It had 2 lookers. Nobody was interested in the house because nobody in their right mind wants that house. So our best friends did end up renting the house. They're really about the paranormal. They love it. They knew everything about it. We warned them, and they were like, hey, we're okay. We can handle this. So we rented the house out just this past December.
And they're still there, huh?
And they're still there. And are they having experiences? Yes. Are they having experiences to our extent? No. We have a gentleman friend who is a shaman, and he's been clearing out the home, and it's not, they are getting experiences, but not to the point, and I pray to God never to the point of what I went through, of what we went through.
So the story has a happy ending.
Yes. Woohoo! Yes.
Well, that's a good thing. That
yes.
is. So, I mean, you obviously the home was featured on shows with what I call paracelebs. Paracelebrities like John Zaffis, Jason Grant, all those those guys.
Yes.
What was kind of their expert opinion on what the heck was going on there? I mean, did they all come out with different theories? I mean, or did the theories correlate to each other?
The theories did not correlate to each other, and I'll be quite honest. Everybody gave me good, solid, sound advice, but to me, the Godfather, in my opinion, I mean, Amy Allen, wonderful. I mean, she had a lot of things dead on. She told me that we had to get them removed with a medium. He had to stay there 3 days, 3 nights. It didn't work. We tried it, didn't work. But when John Zaffis came over, he's investigated the house about 4 times. Now, when he came over, Rich, he says, we were upstairs in the upstairs bedroom, and he brought his Ed's recorder, and John went right into, investigation, like who is here, da-da-da. And this dark entity started talking through the ovulus, and all of these different nationalities were being spoken. They were saying like Lucifer and demon, but they were saying it all in different languages, okay? And on the ovulus, this thing just comes on, and he tells John, he starts laughing at John, and he says, I am ancient. And John's like, I don't care how old you are to be removed from this premises. And what is your name? What is your name? And he laughed at John, and he says, I'm ancient, and I have waited for her for 1,000,000 years, and she will be my bride. And John said, oh no, she won't be your bride. She is with God. And he started laughing. And then all of a sudden you started hearing, demon, demonic, Lucifer, this and that. And he says, you can't have her. And he said, she will be my bride. And
it goes back to what I said before about an incubus, that theory.
Yes. He says, I've waited for her for 1,000,000 years. And he says, and she will be my bride. And he said, I will have her soul. And John looked at me, and pardon the expression, but he said, "D," and he put his hands on my shoulders, and he got right up in my face, and he said, "You have got to get the F out of this house. You hear me?" He said, "You are done."
Yeah, sounds like John. That's
Yeah. He said, "You are done, my friend. You get the now, you know," and he went on and he said, "This thing is ancient. Get out." He lives in the portal. You have got to get out of here. Because, I mean, we were really getting sick. We were always anemic. I thought I had something going on with my pancreas because I was bruising and always, you know, and we were both getting to that point. But then, like I said, once I got my inheritance and we could, you know, we could let the house sit, pay off the house, and buy another one. And
so it sounds to me that I mean, how do I want to phrase my wording here? The paranormal can be present in a lot of places, okay? Let's say, for instance, this is a hypothesis right here. Let's say, for instance, the home had a portal. However it got there, someone opened one up or something happened there at one time to create this portal, okay?
yes,
So the portal can be traveled by anything in the spirit realm, okay? Good, evil, whatever, okay? So then it's kind of like, it's like planting a tomato plant, okay? You can put a seed in the ground, then your neighbor can put a seed in the ground, and your neighbor down the street can put a seed in the ground. And you can all follow the same way of watering it, nurturing it. Some tomatoes will grow up and have a huge plant, right? Festering with tomatoes. Right. Some people won't get anything at all. Some people will get a small plant. It just seems to me that it almost like you were kind of the piece, okay? The fertilizer to the tomato plant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a weird analogy. I apologize. You're like the fertilizer to the tomato plant that made it what it was. By removing you from the house, all those conditions could still remain, okay? But you're not physically near that portal. So, no. Hence the ground is, the soil's been torn away from the tomato plant. So now there's nothing to grow, you know?
Right.
So there are certain things, certain conditions that involve a location, a spiritual type of thing that's happening, and then a person also that makes the conditions perfect for that type of haunting. So Pete, what do you think? What is you're looking? I can tell your brain is. I've known Pete for a number of years, by the way. When he's thinking of something, I can tell he's got that look on his face, like he
did have that look,
about to drop some serious knowledge on us. So go ahead, Peter.
I was just wondering if there was Lincoln's train going through the background. Do you still have like the dreams, or is anything still bothering you to this date?
Yes, like I said, it's like post-traumatic stress syndrome. I've had, I mean, there's so much about this haunting that I haven't even begin to scratch the surface of what had happened to me in that home. And it's very traumatic. It will forever change me. But Christiana, she still comes, and I don't call it a haunting. Like she's not haunting me, but she is connected to me as if she was my protector. And I started to do my research on her, and found out she was brutally murdered by a man named Ephraim. And I too, before I married Tom, was in an abusive relationship, and it was not healthy at all. And I know, do you believe in picking up entities at Pete, do you believe in picking up entities at a cemetery?
They say it can happen, but I don't know why they would be there. But I
Well,
guess anywhere that's the. I mean, old cemeteries had a different purpose than a modern cemetery.
yes,
I mean,
yes,
picnic there. They would bring the families there. I mean, that was a place of, I don't want
yes,
to
togetherness.
it had a different meaning than today. But
Yes. Well, this woman was brutally murdered, and every time that black slithering black top hat came, she was always there to warn me of him.
and it actually just comes to mind. I don't know if you know Stacy Jones. That's
No.
I always remember that her son was actually possessed in a cemetery they were investigating.
Ooh.
Yeah, you know what? And also, DeAnna, you're such a. I mean, it sounds to me like you were raised to be very wholesome, very, very
Yes.
God-fearing, very pure, and then essentially you have something that's so evil and dark at heart, and it says you'll be mine, you'll be my bride. It's attracted to something that's so pure and so good, that it desires that, I mean, I know you have a good soul. I mean, many interactions I've had with you, you're a very outstanding person, and essentially, I think sometimes that evil is attracted to something like that. And I think John Zaffis would concur to me on that essentially that's a target. If you're a president, it's like it's like a child. It's like so innocent and pure and good, and then essentially that's something that's that nasty and evil, negative, if you will, is going to be attracted to that, wants to conquer that. The show. Yeah. Like it mentions God a few times. So there's a lot of moving parts to this story, and it sounds to me that a portal would be a good explanation of what's going on there based on our discussions, because you've got the good spirits and you've got the very evil side of things.
Yes.
And then, what was John Zaffis's conclusion in this? What did he say to you? I mean, what was his, I guess, opinion on what was going on? Did he share that with you?
Oh, sure. Oh, yes. He said that because of what has happened on the land, in the house, that he just felt like, and there were so many different layerings of haunting in that house. If I'm answering your question correctly, he just said it was an accumulation of, just like you said. He says, well, I did find out that the last two owners of that home, the house was built in 1950. The last two owners of that house, were both alcoholics, were both abusive. The first relationship, the first family that lived there, the man Clayton had an affair, and he spawned off a child with Down syndrome. The mother and the child left town for a while, came back and said, here, he's yours. I can't raise him. So the boy was around 14, 15 years old when he came back to live with Clayton in that house we had lived in. And what had happened is Clayton's brother, Raymond, started molesting the boy.
Yeah.
And then the poor boy found out his name was Timothy, but we never found out the last name because it took the name of the mother. When his dad had a burn barrel in the backyard, if your cat or your kitten or whatever came into the yard, he would throw it alive in the burn barrel because he was acting out his anger. So the boy threatened, if you touch me one more time, I'm going to tell my father. Well, that was the day they said he supposedly mishandled a firearm, but then the uncle went and blew his head off at his sister's house at New Oxford. And I mean, it just goes on and on. So the house has had, covered up murder, incest, alcoholism, abuse, And I feel like the house literally drove them to that. And John said the same thing you said. And then you came in here, all love and light, and everything is good, hanging up, you go to church and you have your belief. And he said, and it just wrapped on you like, oh, well, evil loves evil, but you're more of a conqueror.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the complete opposite, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. There you go.
To change you and to bring you to that. But it sounds to me like all the right ingredients were there for that recipe to bring something dark and negative into that. And it's sometimes it's actions by humans, that kind of create that sort of thing. Like if you take a look at like a nursing home, it has a lot of abuse and or possibly suffering and things like that. It's an ingredient to bring in something that feeds on that, so that you can have something very negative that's there, basically just feeding off all the suffering and things that have happened in the past. So these emotions and these actions, it's almost somehow like they trigger or open something or attract something. It's very hard to explain, but I mean, that to me is my theory of what happens.
Well, and it makes sense, and that's what John said too. So, I understand what you're saying, and I do believe in what you're telling me, because John's theory was very closely linked to yours, and because a lot of people got a lot of friends through Facebook and so forth, and they were like, yeah, but God conquers all, and God does this and God does that, and all you have to do is pray and they will leave. No, in my situation and in my case, that's not how it was. It was good versus evil, or evil versus good. It was a constant battle, and I think it was trying my faith. And I never lost my faith, even though at times I had to question it, because I was like, why is this happening to us? And Tom and we were shouting and screaming, and maybe we need a divorce. And I know Tom said, if we can make it through this haunting, we can make it through anything. And I mean, the physical illnesses, when I was thrown down the steps and I had a hairline fracture of my tailbone, and I mean, just one, financial was just one thing after another. I just, I never gave up my faith, and I hold that true to what helped me get through this whole haunting.
Yeah, it's like oppression. It's like oppression, where it basically just keeps trying to press you, where it basically needs you. It just keeps pushing you to see how far it can go, till you just get to the point where you just throw your hands up in the air and just, take it. I can't take it anymore, So yeah, that's it's a pretty horrific story. I mean, and
yes.
For a human being to go through that and come out of a situation like this and still smile and be so upbeat and positive is kind of amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I came out alive, and I've been given a second chance. But I tell you, not without, initially a year ago, I was a hot mess. Like when we were looking at this house, Tom was like, okay, you love it. Do you love it like you loved the other house? I mean, how do you know it's not haunted? I was very paranoid. I was pretty much a scaredy cat there for a while. It's so much better now. But, you just say, oh my God. And I'm sure Carmen felt the same way. She had to, oh, thank God. I'm done. I'm out. I made it. I survived. And, like John said, a lot of the really severe cases is quite normal for people to have post-traumatic stress syndrome, or, to go into counseling and so forth, which really helped, kept me from living in fear.
Yeah, let's, like I said, it's a horrific thing to have to deal with. And, I go back to what I said originally when we came on the show. Some people are like, they're like, oh man, I wish my house was haunted. It's like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
I wish my house is, no, you don't.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
No, I mean, you got to understand that there's levels of it, and it can start out seemingly innocent, but progress into something worse.
Yes.
Usually the things that I tell people when they're dealing with something, when they first contact us, many times they're very scared or concerned. First thing we tell them is to keep calm, okay? Just remain calm. You don't know what you're dealing with right now because you may think something is going bad, but it may not be. It may be just that's how something like a spirit or something is trying to communicate or react to you. So don't just calm down. You know, tune off the paranormal TV shows that you watch where everything they see is a demon and just remain calm. The second thing I tell people a lot of times is don't give it any recognition just yet. You know, don't try to basically go out there and start to communicate the way, what do you want, this and that. Because if you try to do that, and this is kind of the thing I picked up with Pete. Pete's like, imagine if you've been dead all those years and you're trying to communicate with someone and they're not communicating with you. But all of a sudden one day they said, hey, what's up? Let's talk. You're never going to shut up. And so you're basically now open up that line of communication. It's like they're going to basically communicate. They don't know what 3 o'clock in the morning means till 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's no relevance to time. So now they're going to basically try to communicate with you. And that's going to cause some severe psychological issues for the living.
Yes.
You know? And then the third thing I tell people is contact someone for help. Those are my 3 things. Contact someone for help. Now, is it always paranormal? No. Some of the most severe cases that we've been involved in and went into a home ended up being something that was environmental, that was causing a problem. We did a case where it's not uncommon that there's high levels or high pockets of electromagnetic energy that's causing. You've heard of EMF, right? Or you've heard of, okay, some of the paranormal people throw that term around, where that is so high that it kind of plays with your brain, and it can cause things such as hallucination, the feeling of uneasiness, feeling of being watched. And sometimes there's other things like, you know, people's reaction to medication they're taking, you know, prescription stuff or illegal stuff, whatever. So there's so many factors that we as paranormal investigators have to weed out before we can basically go on in. And we as a team never walked in and say, this place is haunted. We never say that because you don't know if something's haunted. It could be a person that is the activity. It could be the place. It could be an object. You just never know. You have to basically, you know, and if we've learned anything from, you know, our mentors like John Zaffis is that objects can also hold negative or positive energy. And by removing an object from a home, everything stops. We've been involved in cases there. So we, as investigators, we have to go in and keep a very open mind, not to think of anything, you know, not to basically tell people that, oh, I think you got a demon here. Oh, I think you got this. Oh, I think you got that. We just try to gather the evidence, figure out what's going on, and present a finding to people. And a lot of times, in most cases, when we present what we found, the people are like, huh, that's it? We're like, this is what we have. Oh, okay, we're good. Just leave it alone. But in some cases like yours, it's not that clean cut. It's much deeper and darker. And then many times paranormal agencies, like the John Zaffises of the world, or other more experienced people to help. Because the common goal is to offer a solution. It's not about who, you know, it's not a thing of like, you know, who's better or smarter. It's all about presenting a solution. And that's how we learn as investigators to become better, by reaching out to people who have more experience with areas that we don't have and try to offer solutions. And a lot of times people are like, oh, I need my house smudged, or I need a blessing. And as you can tell by your example of your case, that did not solve anything. I mean, it did not at all. It gave you some kind of relief for a temporary period of time to recharge your batteries. But then when things started, it escalated to the next level. So you know, sometimes, you know, the solution that you think is the most obvious isn't the most obvious. And sometimes you have to move on to that big letter E that we talk about. You know, I think you're going to need the E to like the E, you know. We've never been to a point, at least I haven't, where it's got to that point where we've ever had to go that route.
Can I jump on your smudging comment for a second?
Oh, yeah, please do.
Please.
This might be a suggestion. We have a privilege, I'll call it, of working with the Native American paranormal group. Like their family tasked with taking care of business. And we learned through them the hard way, not us personally, but when you do smudging, it has to be sage. Like most of the stuff they're selling in the store, these bundles, you go to any of these metaphysical shops.
Yes.
Sage. They also said that you can't pay for it. Once you pay for the sage, like if you buy that bundle, it loses all power to it. That's a native belief. But they tell us, so if anything is happening with you, or if you feel something might be silent that you don't know about, one of their suggestions to us as paranormal investigators, they say to put sage in your shoes. And what that does, it actually makes your spirit invisible to other spirits so that you can walk around and they won't bother you. If you're having problems in the dream world, they said put the sage underneath your mattress. I mean, change it out every now and then. Don't let it decay and all that stuff. That's a native belief.
That's interesting.
If you're trying to hide yourself, that's what'll do it. Like a lot of them, they say, oh, I think we had one out for display, and they're like, what's this, a big joint? They're like, it's sweetgrass, this, there's like, that's not the person who sold it to me said, but so that's why
right.
To involve other people, the vast knowledge that's out there that you learn.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, about the actual land you're on or the house is on, but a lot of people don't know that Gettysburg actually hundreds and hundreds of years ago, I believe it was near the Devil's Den area, that was the site of a major Native American fight. There was a huge battle there.
Yes.
So I don't know, how Hanover works into that scheme of history.
Oh yeah, it does. It does. You're right, because from Maple Avenue, the house that we were living in, the Eichelberger building, there was a huge battle there. So you're right.
So that may trickle over at some point. I mean, I don't know. That's another variable to look into.
Mm-hmm. But
not being joking, we've been in places when John Zaffis tells you get the hell out, you run right behind him. It's like Scooby-Doo.
You do.
Hell out of here.
Oh yeah. Oh man, when John says something, I just look at him and that's right. Oh no, that was it. He didn't have to tell me twice. Before John came in, and I had other groups because I was looking for answers, and I was determined, and I was going to heal that house, and I was going to claim it, and I was going to make it mine, and we didn't have the finances, so I was going to win. I was going to empower it. No. I just made it worse by bringing in too many groups, different beliefs, different personalities, different problems with other people. It was just, I was making it worse. I created,
but you don't know, DeAnna. You don't know. You don't know what's going on. So, I mean, it's tough to be. You think you're trying to help yourself or help those around you. And the paranormal is a very complicated process. It's a pseudoscience. We don't really know. We know beliefs and things that have tried, but it's just like no two stones are the same.
Exactly.
I think Rich is experiencing paranormal difficulty. Unless he's just
works against you.
Froze.
Yes.
There he is.
Yeah, there's Peter. So we are, DeAnna, we're going to wrap this up for the night. And so thank you so much for being on the air with us. I learned a lot about this case, and I'm looking forward to getting the book to read more about it, because it sounds like it was a long case with a lot of moving parts and a lot of different paranormal events. And what I'm really interested in is to learn if in a book, if I can figure out, when the teams came in, what they did, and where it got to resolution, because it's almost kind of an ed book, like a textbook for people like us. We read about cases and how they're successfully dealt with or even unsuccessfully dealt with, and we learn from that sort of stuff, and that's how we move forward as paranormal investigators. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
I'm glad we connected. It was so good to talk to you again, and it's so good to hear that
Same
you're doing
here.
well and
Yes.
enjoying your pool, laying out there, getting a
Oh
tan
my
and stuff
gosh,
like
yes.
that. Live and love life. You enjoy it. So
I am. And
so
thank you both very much. Thank you both. Pete, it was nice meeting you.
Yes, nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful evening.
Hey,
And
you too.
thank you. And so with that, folks, this wraps up another episode of Agent Paranormal on June 14th. We'll give you details when we come back on there with our next show. We hope you're doing well and stay strong. We're getting through this whole COVID thing here. Looking forward to getting to phase 4 and getting back to some normal parts of our life. So with that being said, if you have any paranormal issues or questions, reach out to us on Facebook at Agent Paranormal, where our operators are standing by, operators as in Peter Leonard, standing by to answer your questions. And with that, thank you so much for reviewing the show. We look forward to seeing you again. And stay tuned to some live events once we can get that back on going with the whole COVID stuff. But we look forward to seeing you live and in person. Have a wonderful night. God bless.